Good afternoon again. I am Gene Vaught, one of your lawyers at the beach, and I am here today again with my good buddy and one of my law partners, Scott Hucks. And Scott and I have been getting together quite often and doing these vlogs, talking about legal issues, issues of interest, legal questions that a lot of people have, and also trying to explore and look into and talk about cases of interest, things that are out there now that people want to hear about. And of course, Scott, one of the biggest things that's been going on for the past couple of months is the Alex Murdaugh trial. And when we were together a couple of weeks ago, we did kind of part one and part two of this conversation when we were talking about the trial. And the trial was going on. And as a matter of fact, and we'll talk about just a couple of things today, but the trial is now ended. Mr. Murdaugh was found guilty of murdering his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, and has been sentenced to 2 life sentences. And so I want to address with you today a couple of things, kind of looking back.
There's plenty to look back.
Yeah, a lot. And your reflections and your thoughts. And I want to start kind of where we left off last time. When we were here talking last time, literally in the middle of our conversation, we got word that Alex Murdaugh was taking the stand.
Yep.
And I recall you and I had a little difference of opinion on that, but you felt like that was probably the best move.
Yeah. In looking back on it, I know several jurors have come out now and said something to the effect of him taking a stand is what hurt him because he seemed disingenuous, I believe is what
Right.
I've seen one juror say. And there's a big elephant in the room when you're dealing with this case. And it is that video that the son was taking where you hear Alex Murdaugh's voice in the background talking about a dog that picked up a guinea or chicken or something.
Right.
And there's an elephant in the room there. He has given an entire statement or a bevy of statements at this point in time to the police, all of which that video seems to debunk. So you have that video,
Correct.
and somebody's got to say something about it. You have 2 choices as a defense attorney. You ignore it and hope the jury doesn't put a whole lot of weight on it, or you put your client on the stand or another witness on the stand and own it. And while we've heard in law school, and you've heard from lawyers, pardon me, you've heard from lawyers all over, the last thing you ever want to do is put your client on the stand, because your client has a 5th Amendment right to remain silent, and he never has to say anything against himself in any way, shape, or form. But what you run into, I think, in the real world, as opposed to just in the legal theory, is that somebody on that jury, or those people on the jury, want to know why he's in that. If you're the person, we're both married, pile of children, right? And if we found our children dead or wives dead with their heads blown off, and we were the initial responder, we called the police and we gave the interviews, I feel like that combined with that Snapchat video or Instagram Live or whatever it was, those 2 things combined leave a big question for that jury. And that jury's going to want you to figure, you got to figure out how to explain it away if you're the defense lawyer, or you got to own it. And there was a catch-22 there, because once you put Alex up there, he's got to answer, because the judge opened the door. We talked about that in our last series.
To everything.
Videos, right? The judge opened the door to all of these prior bad acts. They're not convictions, but they're prior bad acts. We had a more in-depth conversation about that previously, right, where I think it's pretty close to the line. And that's the kind of decisions that judges have to make, and appellate courts have to decide if they were right or not. But he's open to being cross-examined on all of that. So I think strategically, the defense is in a position where you put him up to try to explain that video. Either own it, or you either got to own it, or he's got to deny it. And it puts him in a position where he can say, yes, I did all this other bad stuff. Right. I did. I went ahead and I stole this money. I stole this money. I stole this money. I stole this money. I stole tens of millions of dollars from people, but I didn't kill no damn body. Right. And I think that is, that's a thin line to walk. And the jury obviously did not think that he did a good job explaining it. why he was there or explaining it away.
Right.
And I have been involved in a number of murder trials, and I have found there are some attorneys that have a tendency to put their clients up more than others. Should the prior bad acts not have been allowed in because they weren't convictions, if a judge decided that, I think it would have played better for a jury, or it would have been more compelling to a jury. And those are all things we're going to have to find out from appellate court at some point in time down the road, I think.
And you know, it's interesting when you bring that up and you talk about the decision, and you know, it's kind of like from a defense standpoint, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If we don't put him on the stand to testify, and I'm not convinced that his attorneys really wanted him to testify.
Well,
personally,
and that's a good point you bring up.
And we forget, we don't forget, but you know, he's not anymore. But Alex Murdaugh was an attorney, a very accomplished, capable attorney. And so you've got, as a defense attorney, you've got a client who is an attorney and has that attorney mindset. But, you know, if he doesn't testify, although the judge instructs the jury that can't be held against him, we had this conversation last time, it's still something that's in the back of the mind. If you put him up, you run the risk, and it's a huge risk. This jury has sat there for 6 weeks, and they've heard 25 people, 30 people, 40 people say, he's a liar, 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 he lied to me, lied to me, lied to me.
And then he gets on the stand, and the first thing he's got to say is,
I'm a liar, but I'm telling the truth now. And it's kind of like that old proverb, it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Exactly.
So I thought that was an interesting part of the trial, and one that, you know, people like me and you will go back and look at and say, you know, could we have done it different? Had we done it different? Would there have been any change? I don't know.
Well, I think that video, it all boils down to from my perspective.
Right.
And I thought, as a criminal defense lawyer, I do some plaintiff's work with you, and you've done some criminal defense work.
Absolutely.
Guy, but in my experience on both sides of the ball here, you know, as a former prosecutor and a current defense lawyer, that is such a tight line to walk. And you have this video that is just it's an elephant in the room. It's just a bomb in the room, and you either have to defuse it or it's going to blow up. And I think we know which side of it, which one of those two happened.
And just as a quick follow up with that, you know, I was watching an interview that his attorneys, Alex Murdaugh's attorneys, Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin did. It was the day after the trial, and Jim Griffin, when they asked him about the case and the obstacles, he said the biggest obstacles, I call it, this is what his words were, the lie and the why. The lie was obviously, I wasn't down at those kennels. That was dispelled by that Snapchat video that nobody knew existed. You know, I'm sure Alex didn't know that existed till it came out, except Paul. And then he gets on the stand and you own up to it, as you say, I lied. Then you get to the why. And I would like to get your comments or your thoughts on his why, because his why was, I've had this 10+ year opioid pain medication addiction that apparently nobody knew about, or he'd never exhibited any symptoms. Was obviously doing pretty good with cases and things like that.
He's making
but that medication, that opioid addiction, made him paranoid, and especially paranoid when it came to law enforcement. Just as an aside, I think last time we were talking, the amount of money supposedly he was spending on these drugs on a weekly basis, we're talking 50, 60, $100,000 a week, and there's no evidence that he was selling it. And he's saying, no, it was all for personal use. He'd have been taking 50, 60 pills a day.
He having to take a pop.
But so what are your thoughts? What's your opinion on the why?
It's a double-edged sword, right? You get back to the same thing. I'm so strung out on these pills and my addiction that I cannot. I'm so strung out on these pills and my addiction that I cannot function appropriately around law enforcement.
Right.
And it makes me paranoid. Well, does it make you paranoid that maybe this boat crash case that the discovery's coming up up on, that you're going to have to turn over financials and get caught stealing for? Does it make you so paranoid you go kill your wife and your kid? Or you're so paranoid you just lied to law enforcement because you don't want them to find your pill stash?
Right.
And there's, again, that's a decision of fact. And as you and I know, we've heard it dozens of times. When a jury is in the box, a judge tells them every time, I'm the judge of the law and y'all are the judge of the facts, right? I decide what evidence as a judge that you get to hear. And you get to decide how much weight you give that evidence.
Correct.
You can believe one witness against many. You can believe many witnesses against one. We've heard it a number of times, right? And in this situation, it's putting out so much for that jury to wade through. The prosecution had gone through just a full slog of evidence of prior bad acts and other potential criminal matters and all of these things. That paranoia looks to be, again, it's that double-edged sword where
Right.
you just have to decide: do I believe that he was so paranoid he just lied to the cops, or do I believe that paranoia plays into the fact that he blew his kid's brains out?
Right. That's a good point. This case was tried over about 6 weeks. 100 witnesses or more. Thousands of pieces of evidence.
Have you ever heard of a case going on that long?
No,
in
I
South
have
Carolina?
not. No, I have not.
I picture one of those old judges, like Judge Cottingham, saying, "You got 3 days, guys. Get this thing done."
Yes. But a trial of that length, and the jury was literally out 3.5 hours and came back with a verdict. Which to me was shocking. My personal thought was that it's probably going to be a hung jury. There's going to be at least one person on that jury that says, I think he's a rotten, low-down, cheating scoundrel, but I'm not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed these murders. But that's a very, very short deliberation.
It's a very short
Now,
deliberation.
we've tried cases that were like 2-hour cases, and the jury comes back in 15 minutes. Well, you've got a case of that nature. I mean, obviously, that jury had essentially made up its mind. And whether that was because of all the prior bad act stuff that just heavily influenced them, or whether it was, hey, once that video came out, and then once he got up here on this stand and looked us in the eye and said, I lied to the cops. I lied to my brothers. I lied to my other son. I lied to, Maggie's family. I lied to my law partners. That everything after that was blah, 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 blah.
Everything
blah.
after that was just more lies.
But I wanted to kind of get your feedback on the actual sentencing. There's two phases, so to speak. Now, in a murder case, if the death penalty is being pursued by the state, then it's almost like it's not a second trial, but you put witnesses up typically.
It's pretty much a second trial.
And then the jury makes the decision on whether or not the person gets death or life in prison. In this case, first of all, the death penalty was not sought by the state. What is your opinion on that? Why would they not seek the death penalty? And as a former prosecutor who has been faced with that, making that decision, why do you not do that?
And I haven't personally been faced with that decision. I've been around a team of folks that had to make that decision before. In South Carolina, to get the death penalty, to go after the death penalty, someone you not only have to prove that they did it, that they committed the crime of killing somebody. You got to prove that there was an aggravating circumstance, which are a list of circumstances.
Right.
And the best I can tell, the state just wasn't sure that they could get over that hump of the aggravating circumstance. And as far as the bifurcation, the two trial setup, DUI and death penalty are pretty much the only things you got an opportunity at a bifurcated trial in for purposes of sentencing.
Correct.
And wow, imagine if this had been a death penalty, how long it would have gone. We'd be here this time next year.
I would assume, and that's a good point. But since the death penalty wasn't on the table, the defense still has the opportunity to present mitigation, people who would get up there and say, he's a good guy. He's done, this is awful, but he's been such a good guy and he's done so many good things over the course of his life. And typically in a situation like that, you would see a family member or two. Obviously his mama has dementia. His father's passed away.
He's got two
brothers. He's got a sister. He's got a surviving son. One of his brothers and his surviving son testified during the trial. And at a minimum, you expect the defense attorney to get up there and say, have pity, have mercy,
Right.
Be lenient, whatever, just kind of, throw yourself on the mercy of the court. In this situation, the defense attorney said they had no statement to make at sentencing and that Mr. Murdaugh wanted to address the court. And of course, he had a very short statement that just said, I'm innocent, I didn't kill my wife, I didn't kill my son. No witnesses, not witnesses, but nobody to speak on his behalf. What were your thoughts on that? What's your reaction to that?
It's odd, right?
Very.
It's definitely something I've never seen before.
Right.
But as you're aware, representing human beings is not always a smooth, smooth sailing.
Very seldom.
But if you'll, I like to liken it to this: we're driving the boat, right? Like in any one of these situations where we're representing a person, that person makes all the great decisions. And they tell us where the boat's going to go, and we pilot the boat.
Right.
And if our client wants something, if our client wants to testify at trial, and they don't have to because they have a constitutional protection against it, and they want to get up there and say their piece, the judge has a bevy of questions that they have to ask them. And if they say, I still want to testify, they get up on the box and testify.
It doesn't
right?
matter what you and I, as the attorney,
Right.
would have recommended. If the client says nope.
So if Alex Murdaugh is my client and I say, hey, we need to work on this mitigation for tomorrow, and he says, just hypothetically were to say, no, I want to do my own mitigation.
Right.
I want to talk to this court. All I can say at that point in time is potentially, I don't think that's a great idea, but go for it. Whatever you want. This is your, they bought my service to give them the best trial that I can give them with my
Right.
ability. And once it's over, and he decides that's what he wants to do, then that's on him.
And want to wrap up with just a couple things here briefly. Kind of where do we go from here? And obviously, for purposes of this trial, these murder convictions, there are going to be appeals. You and I both believe there are appealable issues.
There are definitely issues that a court is going to have to take a look at.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean that an appellate court is going to reverse or whatever, but there's issues in every case. So there are going to be appeals in this case, but I want to kind of shift focus real quick. We heard for week after week about all this money he stole from his partners, his law firm, and clients who had entrusted their cases to him. Sad situations. Stealing money from, minors who were clients, stealing money from estates.
Mentally handicapped folks.
And in some cases, not just, taking more money than he should have, taking all the money. Client didn't get a penny. There's 99 charges, I believe.
I don't know how many there are. I know there's a pile of them.
I've heard the number 95, I heard 99, and I know the judge, after the sentencing, was discussing this with the state and with the defense, because Judge Newman has been assigned those 90 plus cases to hear, and he's ready to retire. He's not. I think he's
about to age out. South Carolina judges have a mandatory.
So I'm sure he was real happy when they gave him not only this case, but now you got to try. And those, as I understand it, span over 6-8 different counties. Is the state going to try him 99 times?
So either they're going to have to try him, or he's going to have to plead guilty to something.
Right.
Right now they have him, as of right now, pending this appeal. Right, because we do believe there's some appealable issues.
Right.
And he got on the witness stand and he testified to having committed all of these crimes.
I did.
A number of them. I lied, I stole the money, I lied, I stole the money, I lied, I stole the money. So that testimony is a statement given under oath, and that's able to be used against him right now.
Yeah.
Now, should an appellate court hear his murder conviction and set it aside or send it back down for clarification, if they were to set that verdict aside, saying that all of this other evidence, this 404B evidence,
Right.
came in and should not have, then I believe that testimony becomes questionable whether they can use it or not.
Right.
I think if I was the prosecutor, I'd jump on trying those things as quick as I possibly
Real
can,
quick, yeah.
use these statements against him, and then, let's say for purposes of an appellate issue, if they knew or had reason to believe that this case is going to come back on appeal, then they not only do they have these prior bad acts that were let in by the judge, if an appellate court decides that they shouldn't be allowed, it should not have been allowed, then they got him convicted on all of these, and they definitely come in as convictions because they're all felonies, and these prior convictions and their crimes of dishonesty for impeachment purposes, and they can just load him up. Then if this trial went this way this time, imagine how it would go if they have all these, if they got 90 convictions on it and it comes back for appeal.
Well, it's certainly going to be interesting to watch. So many different things. I mean, you've got these murders, you've got all these financial crimes and stealing from clients over a period of 10 plus years. You've got the boat case that we've heard so much about, with a young lady tragically killed in that, civil suits out there involving that, which may be a topic for
I think that'd be a great topic for us to explore.
You got the former housekeeper who
fell down the stairs, pushed out,
died, and now her body is going to be exhumed, and they're going to reopen the investigation of that case. And then
the young man that was
found in the middle of the road, written up as a hit and run, and apparently there's at least some evidence to suggest that wasn't what it was. He was killed and dumped.
I think I read they reopened the investigation.
Yes.
Into that.
And somehow or another, Buster Murdaugh, the other son, is implicated or may be implicated in that. So we got a lot of, I won't say good stuff. We got a lot of interesting stuff that we can be talking about, and I think we're going to be hearing about for many months to come as it pertains to the Murdaughs, the Murdaugh family in general. As we close out today, I just kind of want to get a final thought from you as it pertains to this Murdaugh trial, the Murdaugh situation. Looking back now at what we knew coming in and what we have learned, and then where we stand now. What's your final thought on this when you think back on it and you're gonna talk to your children about it 10 years from now? And say,
I think legally what it shows me is and you can tell me what you think, but what it shows me is that the state's got deep pockets, and if they want you and they're coming after you, they're gonna get you in front of a jury.
Right.
And I'm not saying that he didn't deserve it. I'm just saying that it shows just the sheer breadth. Look at the OnStar evidence that popped up in the middle of trial. Its admissibility is questionable on appeal. And look at the cell phone evidence. Look at the blood splatter. Look at all of these things that if the state got him in his crosshairs at that point in time, I would no doubt they have spent tens of millions of dollars. I mean,
without question,
in this particular case, trying to get their guy.
Right.
And it brings us back to an initial talk that we had about judicial economy. If he's got 100 cases that you could prove in 3 days apiece, where's the value of giving him 120 years or 200 years in prison versus expending all this state clerk?
Life is life.
Yeah, if you're gonna die there, you're gonna die there. Right. I understand under South Carolina law, if you get life in prison, then that means you come out of there toes up, right? You come out of there dead as a hammer. And I understand the state's wish to prove that, and I understand the state's want to do that. The judicial economy of it seems, I don't want to say questionable, because those victims deserve to have their issues heard by a jury.
Right.
In my opinion, when I was a prosecutor, no, I didn't work for the Attorney General's office, didn't have the Attorney General's budget. I didn't do any of that. I feel like my boss that I worked for those years ago would have said, let's start where we can. Let's get the low hanging fruit and let's work our way up to that.
Right.
And I don't know, I don't want to make a judgment on how they did it or why they did it. They did what was in their prerogative to do. But the vast power of the state is the one thing that just keeps ringing in my ears when I go through all of this.
It's yes, and I agree. Millions of dollars spent, countless hours, and you would think that the other cases, the financial cases, were about, and most of what we've seen and heard about is open and shut as something can be. I guess my final take is summing it up, and I'm gonna kind of go a different route, and not to minimize the situation with, a wife and mother, a son who were brutally murdered and killed. But my final thought on this case, and you and I had this conversation the other night, kind of going back and forth, is more about Alec Murdaugh, and Alec Murdaugh as an attorney, Alec Murdaugh as a person. I've been practicing law for 32 years, and I do personal injury law. I practice the same kind of law, not the same way that Alex Murdaugh did for so many years, and I represent people, as do you.
And there's a level of trust there.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. And we aren't naive. In our profession, there's a whole lot of people that just don't think very highly of lawyers or the law practice, and so people like us work very hard to develop that trust and not to betray that trust. And I tell clients, as you do all the time, I'm only as good as the next person you're going to send to me.
Mm-hmm.
When you walk out this door, I might not have been able to get you the biggest settlement or as much money, and none is ever enough, and especially in cases like death cases and everything. But I want you to be able to go out and tell others, he's a good fella. He worked hard for me. He did his best. He was honest. He was sincere. And I think what Alex Murdaugh did over the course of the years of coming out puts so much of a stain on our profession, to the point where, people like me and you, who I hope people think are honest, decent, and people who care about you, are going to have to work that much harder to not only gain but maintain people's trust, because that's got to be in the back of people's minds. Wait a minute, this guy was stealing from every client he had.
And you and I get up all the time, and you and I talk about it. We've had some real serious heart-to-hearts over the last number of years. I think we've been hanging out since about 2008 or something.
Time.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And we used to coach kids together.
Right.
And we have had many a heart-to-heart talk over the years about how what's going on with our clients is affecting us personally and at home.
Yes, sir.
I want to help this poor. The old adage in the criminal defense world is everybody hates criminal defense lawyers till their kid gets arrested. Right? and in your world, everybody hates an ambulance chaser till somebody gets hit by a car.
Right.
And that we try so hard to do our best and be competent and effective for our clients. And I've had many a tear shed with a client that was looking at a real hard road to go. And I know you have too. And I hope that the circus of all of this is not, doesn't stain our profession, put the black cloud over us. That, the old Pink Panther cartoon where he's walking around and the thunderstorm won't leave him alone.
Yeah, right? Cloud kept following him.
And I don't think, let me rephrase, and I hope against hope that we can outlive this, because there's a lot of lawyers out there that get up and do a good job for their client, and I'm sure there's some yay-hos out there that don't, but we work really hard for our clients, and
I believe that the overwhelming majority of attorneys are good, honest, decent, hardworking people, and I think Alex Murdaugh is the exception and certainly not the rule.
I completely agree.
But well, I've enjoyed talking to you today about this, and like I said, we'll get back together here in another week or two, and we'll discuss other issues. You know, we're always happy to discuss any issues of interest and try to answer any questions that you guys may have. You know, give us a call, go on our website, email us, www.lawyersatthebeach.com. We have 3 offices: Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, and Litchfield. We're here in our Litchfield office today. But if you've got issues, if you've got cases, if there's some current case or situation that you would like to hear us discuss, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, like and subscribe to our page. And if there are any issues that you'd like to see us discuss at any time in the future, feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email, maybe leave a comment. Thank you guys for being with us today, and we're always happy to be your lawyers at the beach.